Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news. And welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you, the listener, direct connection. What's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are this week Jason McGuire of New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms and Dan Bartkowiak at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Dan, first time on the program, sir. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much, Bob.
All right, we'll begin in Albany, though. Jason, the governor went public with his COVID vaccine game plan this week. 170,000 shots should begin arriving this weekend. There is an effort afoot in Albany that could make this vaccine mandatory. Do you think that'll ever happen?
Well, I think it's very possible. If enough New Yorkers do not get that vaccine, there could be an effort by the Democratic supermajority and Governor Andrew Cuomo to make that a mandate. There is time, though. There are a lot of listeners that are calling our offices and are reaching out through social media, acting as if this is imminent. It is not. The legislature is not even in session yet, but it could be an issue in the 2021 legislative session.
All right, and Dan, let's bring you in the mix. The governor yesterday with a bombshell announcement kind of taking the Commonwealth back to where we were in the days of March and April when it comes to the COVID infection rate. Not going over well with small businesses. Is this the final nail in the coffin for many of them heading into the Christmas season?
Yeah, well, they're certainly asking that question. I mean, Governor Wolf gave no advance warning. I mean, his office on Wednesday was actually denying rumors of a shutdown. Yet Wolf drops all these restrictions, a complete shutdown on all indoor dining, less than 2 days to take effect. And restaurants don't produce food magically. Yeah. I mean, how much money was used to order food supplies that now have no customers? And employers are being laid off 2 weeks before Christmas. I mean, how many of these problems, the question I'd have is, could have been avoided had Wolf office actually worked with state lawmakers, with these family business owners that are most affected.
Yeah, and I know there's this COVID package we're hoping for a lot of people are desperately in need of, but let's talk about the science of this, Jason. You know, a lot of these small businesses say, show me the scientific proof that a government-mandated shutdown will actually flatten the curve. Even in New York State, there's talk of taking us back to the lockdown days of March and April. How do you address those concerns?
Well, I think when people congregate, there are concerns about the spread of COVID, but the greater question is, really what is the greatest risk we're running? And as you look at the impact that this the pause and these COVID lockdowns are having on kids and education and, the economic situation that families are facing, the depression, even suicide in some cases, I think the cost of locking us down is far greater than managing this through other means, such as social distancing and things that many businesses are already engaging in. So there's a rational approach we can have here that does not force us all to live in our basements.
All right. And if you're just joining us, this is Capital Connection. Every Friday we talk about the weighty issues in the news from the state capitals with the experts on the issues. They are Jason McGuire at New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms, and joining him this week, Dan Bartkowiak at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Dan, your organization hosted a webinar this week on ways to prevent and resolve conflict in the church when it comes to this pandemic. Explain why that was so necessary.
Yeah, well, one of my pastors says COVID-19 has been the hardest issue he's faced as a pastor, and churches are trying to minister and help their members, help their community, and opinions can vary drastically on how to handle all these government orders, the severity of the crisis. So that's why our team, through our Church Ambassador Network, led by Kurt Weaver, have really stepped up to really help literally thousands of pastors. An example being the webinars and the one we did this week with Ken Sandy, others, how to continue reaching people with the gospel despite these new challenges. So we've been excited with that program.
All right, well, let's talk about politics, because that's the other big story that doesn't ever seem to end, Jason. Congresswoman-elect Nicole Malliotakis, I love saying her name, she said something this week that caught my attention. She warned that the spread of socialism is something that New Yorkers need to be concerned of. It's not just happening in Washington, it's happening in Albany. How is that influence, socialism, going to manifest itself in New York next year?
Well, under what's going to be the new New York State Democratic supermajorities, there are multiple members in the Democratic Conference in both houses that are declared Democratic Socialists of America candidates, DSA candidates. And so they're looking to spread that influence through things like single-payer health care, which really is just a government-run program that makes private health insurance no longer a reality here in New York. Yeah. There will be a movement to do away with rent and other types of things, acting as if people that are business owners really are the enemies of the state. And that's a problem that we're going to see increasingly with a younger conference coming in. It's going to be very, very difficult for those of us who are more center-right in these issues.
Man, of course, you can't talk politics without mentioning Pennsylvania. They are in the center of the storm, Dan. The U.S. Supreme Court tossed out a bid this week that would have thrown out those no-excuse mail-in ballots, the lawsuit brought by Congressman Mike Kelly. Does this end the legal challenges in Pennsylvania?
Well, certainly not. The court's actions were towards the emergency injunction to stop immediately the certification of those election results. So there's still an opportunity by Congressman Kelly and the plaintiffs to file to consider the merits of the case, which they've indicated they're going to do. So it's certainly not the end. There's also the case filed by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, which is supported by 18 other state attorneys generals that challenge 4 states, including Pennsylvania, regarding the presidential electors. So certainly this is not the end of any legal arguments.
Let me have a quick follow-up to that, Dan. Many were saying that this challenge by more than half the states here, these states' attorney general, is the one with more weight anyway. So they weren't so concerned with the Mike Kelly suit being tossed, but they're putting all their eggs in this basket with these 18, I think, so far, states' attorney general. How much chance of success does that have?
Well, I think, again, it just shows, I think, the support that's given in trying to find out what our election process is doing. I think the need to play out and really resolve all the legal systems as to the fullest extent that we can do, that's going to at least give a little bit of confidence to the public to show, we want to look at what has happened this election. It's an unprecedented election, and everything we should be doing to try to figure out if there were any irregularities and truly the results that came this election.
All right. Hey, Jason, New York State Supreme Court Justice Scott Del Conte, I hope I said his name right, Del Conte, ordered a recanvassing of the vote in all of the 8 counties that make up the 22nd congressional district. How will this impact the outcome of that yet-to-be-decided race between Claudia Tenney and Anthony Brindisi?
Well, it's hard to tell. There are only 12 votes that really are separating the two candidates in over 60,000 cast in their particular race. To think that a congressional race is coming down to really a handful of ballots is just stunning in itself. The recanvassing may show some errors, it may show some problems, and that may sway that vote one way or the other. But I'm pretty confident that Judge Del Conte will do the right thing and be fair and impartial in his decisions.
And then finally, Dan, Senator Toomey called it completely unacceptable, his words, for the president to try and persuade state lawmakers to overturn the election results in Pennsylvania. Can state residents really have confidence? And you alluded to this before, that these challenges are all about restoring confidence. Can they have confidence that the tally taken November 3rd was legitimate?
Well, again, I think this being an unprecedented election, we had last-minute changes and nearly half of votes being by mail. So I could point, Politico shows 70% of Republicans feel the election was not free and fair. I mean, it seems reasonable to allow the legal system to play out to its fullest extent and allow the public to put to rest some of their concerns and shining light on areas that need to be improved. I mean, Pennsylvania's election did not mirror state election laws, even the most recent enacted in a bipartisan effort in 2019. So we need to really, frankly, restore full confidence in our election process and make sure that it is of full confidence in the results of that election.
All right, and that will have to be the last word this week. But, hey, if you got questions about any of the issues in New York State, Jason, you have a wonderful website where folks can go check you out. What is that, sir?
AlbanyUpdate.com.
Stay informed on the issues in Pennsylvania as well. Dan, what's your website, sir?
Sure, PAFamily.org.